Daddy, stop touching me. You're hurting me. I am not hurting you, Jamal. I'm only teaching you how to be a real man. Real men do not need women.
Laura met Femi on Instagram, where his polished photos and confident demeanor immediately caught her attention. They began talking online, and within a month, their conversations had grown increasingly intense. Femi was charming, intelligent, and business-minded, with an air of mystery that fascinated Laura. He spoke passionately about his goals, his plan for the future, and his disciplined focus on success. His apparent lack of interest in women outside of romantic intentions made him seem even more sincere and trustworthy. When Femi returned home after their month of virtual connection, they finally met in person, and Laura found herself even more captivated by him. His sharp mind, respectful attitude, and financial confidence swept her off her feet. He wasn't like other men she had known. His lack of flirtation and preference for the company of his close circle of male friends gave her a sense of security and stability. In just 3 short months of knowing each other in person, Femi proposed the idea of marriage. Laura, carried away by his charm, his focus, and the lifestyle he promised, eagerly agreed. Their whirlwind romance moved at lightning speed, and they soon began preparing for a life together, building what seems to be a perfect love story from the outside. Laura's friends were thrilled when she announced her engagement to Femi, but her friend Tola couldn't help but voice some concerns. Laura, don't you think this is happening too fast? You've only known him for 3 months. Maybe you should take your time to really get to know him. Laura frowned, clearly annoyed. Take my time for what, Tola? So that he can move to another woman? Why can't you just be happy for me? Femi is everything I've ever wanted. He's charming, focused, and he treats me like a queen. What's there to wait for? She snapped. Tola sighed, but decided to let it go. From Laura's perspective, Femi was perfect. He wasn't like other men she had known. He was never overly sexual with her, only occasionally giving her small kisses. And he always made it clear that he was big on avoiding fornication. And his restraint made Laura admire him even more. She saw him as disciplined and principled, and it only deepened her respect and attraction for him. Femi had a best friend named Kene, who was more like a brother to him. Kene was his right-hand man, and their bond was unshakable. They spent hours together, playing video games, laughing endlessly, and sharing inside jokes that no one else seemed to understand. Femi often told Laura, Kene has been my closest friend since we were 18. We went to the same school in England, and he's always had my back. At first, Laura admired their friendship, but she couldn't help but feel a little left out. One evening, she brought it up. Femi, I feel like you spend more time with your friends than you do with me, she said, trying to mask her frustration with a smile. Femi chuckled and asked, You're jealous of Kene? Come on, babe. You know you're my wife-to-be. Kene is like a brother to me. That's different. Don't worry, you'd always come first. Though his words reassured her in the moment, the nagging feeling didn't completely leave Laura. She told herself it was just her overthinking. After all, wasn't it a good thing that Femi valued loyalty and close friendship especially with males. The traditional marriage ceremony was held in a grand hotel, and the setting was modern and yet elegantly simple. The decorations were minimalist, with sleek white tablecloths and soft greenery arranged tastefully across the venue. Guests were dressed in their finest attire, mingling and enjoying the chic yet unstated environment. The food was expertly catered, offering a mix of traditional and contemporary dishes that delighted everyone's taste buds. As Laura entered the venue, she felt like the day was perfectly designed just for her. A beautiful, simple celebration of love and commitment. The elegant simplicity of the setting, combined with Femi's impeccable taste, made the entire occasion feel like a dream come true. For Laura, it was the beginning of a new chapter. She was marrying the man of her dreams, a rich and handsome young man, one that she hoped would be as perfect as this grand yet simple day. What more could she ask for? As time went on, Kenne became an even bigger part of their lives. He was practically a constant presence in their home, always around whenever Femi was in town. It seemed like wherever Femi went, Kenne was sure to follow. They traveled together frequently, with Kenne accompanying Femi on business trips across Nigeria. Laura had grown accustomed to having him around, but there were times when it felt like he was more of a fixture in their lives than just a friend. For Laura, it began to feel like there was little room for her in their world. When Femi was home, he often spent hours with Kenne, either reminiscing about their university days or making plans for their next venture. The constant presence of Kenne began to create an emotional distance between Laura and Femi. She tried to embrace the friendship, knowing how important Kenne was to Femi. But there were moments when she felt like a third wheel in her own marriage. Kenne's frequent visits and their trips together left Laura with a lingering sense that she was competing not just with Femi's business, but with his lifelong friend as well. Despite the growing tension, Laura consoled herself with the thought that Femi was not a womanizer. She knew he didn't have an interest in women, and his focus on his business and friendship with Kenne and other male friends reassured her. Femi had always been clear about his values, and his lack of flirtation or attention towards women made Laura feel secure in their relationship. She convinced herself that it was simply his way of showing loyalty to those closest to him. Years passed, and Laura and Femi were blessed with two beautiful children, Jamal and Julia. Jamal, their quiet 5-year-old son, resembled Femi so much that it often felt like looking at a younger version of him. With his calm demeanor and thoughtful eyes, Jamal had a serene presence that contrasted with his sister's vibrant energy. 2-year-old Julia, on the other hand, was a carbon copy of her mother, with Laura's bright smile, sparkling eyes, and lively spirits. She had a natural charm that lit up any room she entered, and her playful nature brought an extra layer of joy to their family. Laura was managing a large market firm, and her career was thriving. She spent long hours at her desk, working late into the night and often, into the weekend. The constant demands of her job left her with little time to devote to her children. Jamal and Julia were growing fast, and she always felt guilty for not being present in their lives as she wanted to be. After much consideration, Laura decided to hire a nanny to care for the kids. She wanted to ensure they were well looked after while she focused on her work. But it also gave her peace of mind knowing that they would have someone around when she couldn't be there. Although she loved her children deeply, the balance between her demanding job and her responsibilities at home was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. The nanny would help, but she still struggled with the feeling that she wasn't being the mother she had envisioned herself to be. But Laura loved the fact that she was making her own money. Even though Femi could provide for everything, her career gave her a sense of independence and fulfillment. Femi, on the other hand, was incredibly close to his kids, especially Jamal. His work, though demanding, allowed him enough flexibility to be present for them. He especially adored his son Jamal. I would never joke around when it came to spending time with him. Every single night, Femi made sure to put Jamal to bed in his room, tucking him in and sharing quiet moments together before sleep. His bond with Julia was just as strong, though it was his relationship with Jamal that he cherished the most. Meanwhile, Femi and Kene remained as close as ever, and Femi valued Kene's presence in his life more than anything. While Laura was caught up in her work, Femi's devotion to his kids and his lifelong friendship with Kene remained at the heart of his world. However, beneath the surface, Femi was a monster. Every single night, he would go to his son's room, insisting on tucking him to bed. He would start touching Jamal inappropriately. "Daddy, stop! You're hurting me," Jamal would say, crying. But Femi would continue and even threaten him not to tell Inem, the nanny, or even his mother. The next day, he would get him a very beautiful toy. As the months passed, the abuse continued in the darkness of Jamal's room, and Laura remained unaware of the horrific reality unfolding in her own home. She was deeply absorbed in her work, often sitting at her laptop late into the night, juggling the demands of her career while trying to maintain her role as a mother and wife. Femi's increasingly erratic behavior, especially at night, went unnoticed as Laura's exhaustion kept her distracted. She trusted Femi. He was her husband, believing him to be a loving husband and father, never suspecting that he was capable of inflicting such harm on their child, especially not Jamal. Jamal, once a joyful and playful boy, started changing. His laughter faded, and he became quiet and withdrawn. His eyes, once full of life, now seemed distant, and he began showing signs of anxiety, fear, and confusion. Every night, the cycle repeated. Laura, in her daily routine, didn't notice the subtle changes in Jamal's behavior. She assumed his quietness was simply a phase or the result of being a little tired from school. When Laura finally had a rare moment to herself, she sat at the balcony, sipping her juice and enjoying the brief quiet of the morning. It was the only time during the week she wasn't glued to her laptop and dealing with work emails, and she cherished the small window of peace. Jamal, usually full of energy, walked up to her, his little face unusually somber, his eyes darted nervously around before meeting hers. "Mommy, can I tell you something?"